You're watching World Championship Wreckage! Pro wrestling history the way the fans remember it. Brought to you by Rivet City Radio and the World Championship Wreckage YouTube page. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Today's episode, the last ever Monday Nitro.
They choose their final broadcast to be some, redneck beer joint. I own WCW.
Oh my god!
Fire! Oh, fire! Oh my goodness! What's the procedure?
You know how Jeff spells his name? That's Jeff. Well, you know what? I would suspect that we'd spell it a different way after tonight.
An air duct. Oh my god! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm! Wait. Everybody calm!
That would be capital G, double O, double N, double E. Gone.
Okay, go to the back door. Another option. Jeez. Okay, settle down, everyone. No.
The very fate of WCW is in my hands.
Ah, my hand, that's hot.
This was hot too.
Okay. Oh, please. Have you ever seen a burn victim?
And I did not know about that intro. Me wearing this shirt is pure fate, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of World Championship Wreckage. As always, I am one of your hosts, your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan. Next to me, as always, my buddy from Tennessee, the Will Gray from Bot Spots and Chair Shots. And then joining us tonight for the first time here on World Championship Wreckage from the Wrestletok Wolfpac, which is very near and dear to my heart, the Tribal Queen, Breigh Stout. Breigh, thanks for coming on the show finally.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
What's going on, Will? How's your week going?
You don't even want to know, man. I've had the wildest week imaginable, from the transmission of my car falling out to rescheduling shows to having interviews. I got a job offer that I didn't apply for. Like, it's been a weird fucking week, dude.
And it's not even the weekend yet.
It's only Thursday.
I know, it's only Thursday. Well, I'm excited about this episode. It's only fitting that you won the poll with this, because you won the very first episode of World Championship Wreckage, which was, the Turner buyout, kind of the start of, from the NWA to WCW. Of course, you're going to win the poll that is the last Nitro, the very end of the company. So I'm going to pitch it over to you. It's been talked about a lot over the last, let's not say how many years it is, because it's going to make me feel even older than I even imagined. But yeah, Will, it is yours. Don't call it a comeback, right?
Don't call it a comeback. It was only a matter of time. I haven't been here for years, just several months at this point.
Yeah.
The thing to remember, when I did the first episode of the show, I said it was like the Old Testament, right? I was like, this person begot this person, and then they bought a TV show, and boom, WCW was founded. The ending of how this works is hella entertaining compared to how WCW started. So building up to it, in the commentary, we'll get there, they mentioned that they had no idea that this happened until the Friday before, when the cell went final. That's when all the talent found out. That's when the commentators found out. So on this broadcast, they said the whole world of pro wrestling has changed in the last 4 days. So it starts the episode, and it's Vince McMahon. He's standing backstage, and we talked about this on the very first episode of the show. Vince McMahon started this all in 1983 on Black Saturday when he bought Ted Turner's time spots. Here we are, 2001, and we're doing the same thing over again. Vince McMahon comes out. He runs the opening broadcast. It's a pre-taped. He's in Cleveland. WCW is in Panama City. Yeah. So he's broadcasting between the two places, doing pre-tapes. And he explains that he bought WCW and everything was going on. So I ask you, I know the two of you have two very different outlooks on this. DadHat, you and I grew up watching WCW, and I know Breigh, you didn't start watching WCW until much later. So you weren't currently watching wrestling when this happened, right?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't start watching wrestling period till like 2015. And like this is my first episode of WCW that I actually watched.
Like ever?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So see,
Oh,
that's
wow.
awesome then. That's going to be hella fun for me because I'm going to be like, you know, all of these people then from WWE. So seeing them as WCW stars was like, hold on a second. So I'm going to start DadHat as the lifelong fan, and then Breigh as the person who's only been watching for, you know, the last 8 years or so. What did you guys think about Vince McMahon being on the WCW the broadcast? It's two very differing opinions because DadHat, you remember it like me. Like it was its own thing. And then Vince shows up out of nowhere.
It was weird. And you know, this was where the internet had just kind of started being more of a thing, you know, in the world, and you were hearing things and reading things like, but they were always rumors. You never really knew for sure. And I feel like, I don't know, I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I kind of remember reading or hearing like, hey, WCW got bought by the WWF. But when Vince McMahon pops up, the first thing after seeing, like, I don't even, I and from just watching it, even then watching it back this week, like, I don't remember even now. I'm like, do you see Vince before you even see the WCW logo? Right? Don't you? Isn't Vince the first thing you see before you even get the Nitro intro?
Oh yeah, no, it's Vince's promo. Then they cut to the Nitro intro.
Yeah. So I remember being like, watching it and just being like, okay, well, that what I read is clearly is true, and it felt weird and it felt uncertain. And it's like the first time watching it for me was very much a blur because like it's like you're trying to watch the show, but also you're as a fan, your mind is racing. But also at the same time, we've talked about it. By this point, we most likely have clicked over and are mainly just watching WWF at this point. You know, we're a week away from Mania. This was also the go home Raw to the biggest WrestleMania in history, WrestleMania 17. And so there's a lot going on. So, but I mean, I still kept up with Nitro, but it felt so weird. I will say this, starting and seeing Vince at the Open made me watch that entire episode, and I didn't click over, like, you know, TiVo had become a thing by this point. So like I could go back and watch Raw. But yeah, it was weird. It was weird seeing Vince and talking about WCW and not knowing, like, I mean, and then there's the fan part of me, which, you know, the endless possible dream matches we could have now.
Breigh, having come into it later in life and gone back now, because you've seen as much wrestling as you've watched in the last 8 years, you know the lore behind Vince McMahon showing up and buying WCW. What did you think about it when you sat down and watched the episode, though? Like actually seeing it unfold in real time?
I wasn't too familiar about it, but like the one thing I noticed with Vince in this episode is he seemed to be featured a lot. And like one of the segments that he was involved in, I'm sure we'll probably talk about it. There was one particular backstage scene that kind of like bothered me. I'm like, they showed that on TV.
It's the Trish segment, isn't it?
The Trish.
I was wondering who that was at first. I'm like, I was like, is that Trish?
That's early young Trish, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that I don't know, that just bothered me a little bit.
Allison came in while I was watching it, and she also came in to wrestling super late, and she was like, who the hell is that? And I was like, that's Trish Stratus. And she goes, no way. Like,
wow.
She was convinced. She was like, that can't be the same person.
Yeah.
So after we get Vince's promo and he cuts it and everything that happens, and we're kind of in awe, Nature Boy comes out. And he cuts, in my opinion, having been a lifelong Nature Boy fan, he cuts one of the most Nature Boy promos you can cut. He talks about how you can't hold WCW in its hand, the 60 years of history at this point and he rattles off every great from, he goes through the Legion of Doom and Flair and Steamboat and Dusty and, Harley Race, and he just rattles off every NWA great that's ever been there. And he's like, you never hold this in the palm of your hand. He's pretty much telling Vince like where he can shove it. He's like, we're always going to be WCW no matter what 3 letters are in front of our name. And
Which is so funny now because he's always like up McMahon's ass. Like in any interview, he's just like, "Oh, Vince is the be all end all." Like he's so like, it's like, please bring me back for something.
That's because he's broke and Vince pays him $1 million a year to set at home.
Oh yeah.
So listening to his promo, he then gets to the point where he gives you that moment. And I know in DadHat's little pro wrestling heart, he was the happiest because he says, you know, Stinger, this is it. This is the last night. We're going to do it one more time. And it was Flair and Sting. Breigh, I'm going to tee you off with this one. Having not been super exposed to Ric Flair at this point, what did you think about Flair's promo? Because like I said, he kind of went through it. Like he rattled off pretty much every dude who was ever somebody in the NWA, and he poured his heart out into that ring about how important WCW was. How did it feel to you? What did you think about what Flair had to say?
I mean, considering this is probably the first Ric Flair promo I've heard, I mean, he could definitely hold his own on the mic, and I mean, it definitely kept my attention. That's for sure.
Agreed. He's one of the best on the mic. I don't think that's not even debatable at this point. DadHat?
I mean, it's every emotion.
It's your boy.
It's every emotion. Yeah, it's every emotion coming through. Like you can tell that he is just like, I don't know, like it's right that they start off the show with him, and it's right that they end it with him and Sting, because even though Flair left and came back, those are WCW. That, like, if you're the letters WCW, not just the NWA, but just Turner and WCW, it is Flair and it is Sting, and it's a great. They're the bookends, and it's great. But yeah, Flair. I mean, you just feel that emotion coming through the screen. I mean, you the passion, but I mean, you feel the anger behind it too at the same time. But there's also some happiness because he's seen how in the last several years how crappy the company's been run.
Agreed. We get to our first action of the night, and I didn't remember this being the first match on the card.
Me either.
At all. I had no idea. I knew it happened. I remembered the match, but they opened with a title versus title World Heavyweight Champion, U.S. Heavyweight Champion, winner take all match between Booker T and Scott Steiner. And on paper, this was one of those, like, should have been, it would have been great. If it was a pay-per-view main event, it could have been a 30-minute banger. Yeah. These guys gave us the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club band of wrestling matches because they gave us a 30-minute match in 5 minutes.
They played their hits. They played their hits.
That's exactly what happened. They knew they had a 5-minute match. They finished it in 5 minutes and 11 seconds. Like that's how professional these guys were. So looking at a young Booker, Breigh, once again, I'm going to hand it off to you, ladies first. Looking at a young Booker T then versus how you know Booker now in NXT and as a commentator, what did you think about having a chance to go back to see baby Booker? Because in 2001, he was still like, he hadn't even grown out his dreadlocks yet. Like, I know, baby Booker.
a little bit of hair going on. It was interesting to watch it too, because I had never seen either one of them wrestle, Scott Steiner or Booker. So it was interesting to see baby Booker and, to see him win both belts. And yeah, it was a really good match though. Like, I thought it was a good way to start the episode.
It was. It seemed like a very WWE thing to do because Vince and Triple H both like to start with a title match and end with a title match. And this one
was backstage producing for them. Pritchard was there.
Yeah.
Pritchard and Shane were in Panama.
Yeah, they were at the gorilla position. I read about that later. Like they were there. Shane wasn't necessarily hands-on. He knew his spot. He knew his segment. He was going to go out and do his thing. But you'd be crazy not to have Shane McMahon there and not have him helping. But Bruce Pritchard was at Gorilla with a headset on for the entire episode.
Yeah, I mean, you better believe, though. I mean, we're going to talk about Shane for sure. But you better believe Shane was there, and maybe he wasn't in Gorilla like you're talking about. but he's still on the clock doing his job and feeling out talent backstage, and also filling out talent of, you used to be in the WWF. What's your attitude like now? So,
and there's a ton of those guys, and we'll get to those names and start rattling them off here soon. Some guys that had went there and then left, or it's such a weird group of talent that's on this card. So we saw Booker win, unified the titles. Booker gets the gold. He leaves with both belts. I think
it's weird though. Like I forgot about the whole, because this was really his thing and that his last big push. Well, we've talked about, like, these were the two that WCW tied the anchor to for their heavyweight division at that tail end. But like, I totally forgot about the whole Booker in the intro for the song and in his promo later on, the "don't hate the player, hate the game." And I'm like, it was like he said that, or I heard that with the music, and I'm like transported back to 2001 in high school and being like, oh man, I remember that.
Oh yeah. The whole thing was very, very nostalgic for me, because I remember watching it live, but I could probably count. I know for a fact I could count on one hand how many times I've actually watched this episode of Nitro. This may be my second or third time watching it from beginning to end.
The highlights, the Shane, the Booker T falling with the belts, like, the Flair and the Sting, like those are the highlights.
But looking back on it, the second match of the night, and some of this is going to be out of order. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys. But the four-way match for the number one contendership for the Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions. First off, completely fucking forgot they had Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions.
Same. Like,
no idea. Like, I don't know if
the belts out. I was like, what belt is? Oh, okay. I don't remember this.
Like, I just completely brain farted. Like, I went back and looked up history to see who had it, who held them, how long they were there, because for some reason the Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions were like out of my mind in history. Because when I think that Cruiserweight division, and we've got an episode coming up for it finally, but like, I think of your Kidmans and your Rays, you get through all these names, and then you look at this match, and in this match they had Ray and Billy, they had Shannon Moore, who goes on to be like one of those good but not great guys in WWE.
He was next to Matt Hardy version 1. That's probably what most well known in WWE.
Yeah, for sure. Evan Courageous didn't really do anything. Kaz Hayashi and Yang, also two guys that didn't do anything.
Yeah.
This match was 3.5 minutes of luchador high spots.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty much, that's the best way to put it. They did their spots, they got over, and everything looked good doing it. If you wanted a 450, there was a 450. If you wanted the shooting star press, there was a shooting star press. Hurricane Ranas, Dragon Ranas, Poison Ranas, like all the Ranas ever. Breigh, how exposed to this style of luchador wrestling have you been?
Not that exposed. The only one out of those names that I even knew was Rey Mysterio.
And you got to see him without a mask.
He wrestled. Yeah, I was gonna say it took me a minute to get. I'm like, is that really Ray without a
With
mask?
the devil horns.
Yep. Because
Breigh, ask me why Ray didn't have his mask, please.
Why didn't he have his mask?
Because of Kevin fucking Nash. Kevin Nash, the worst part about WCW, I will say it every episode. That man ruined WCW when he held the pencil. He booked himself to take Ray's mask off. Like, wrote the story, was just like, this is a good time. Let's beat Ray and take his mask. Even Ray was like, I don't think so. Anyways, I digress. Maskless Rey Mysterio is just yucky. I don't like it. But Mysterio and Billy Kidman, they get the win. Historic rivalry between those two. Like, going back and looking in that WCW Cruiserweight division, like, they fought time and time again for that belt, and throwing Eddie in the mix and everything that was happening. Like, my question for you, DadHat, is, could the wrestling today as a cruiserweight tag team option, is that viable in wrestling in 2023, do you think? Could we have it? And I'm not saying in any specific company. Do you think there's a company currently like running that could utilize a tag team cruiserweight championship?
I'm going to say no, just because I think in 2023 we've gotten to the point where weight and size doesn't necessarily matter. When we've had world champions like Daniel Bryan, Rey Mysterio, ones that are not, the giants of the 80s for the World Wrestling Federation. Like, I mean, and you could say cruiserweight and think of it either in like size and weight, or you can look at it in terms of style. So I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Like the cruiserweight style is very much that luchador, high flying, mixed in with Japanese. You know, it but I just don't think so, because especially in 2023, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of flippy dippy shit.
Everybody
And
does it already,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Like why? Like there's like main eventers are doing it. Like if you look at what Kenny Omega is doing a lot of in a lot of matches, it's cruiserweight style.
You mean Omega Canyon? Because they're the same person. They're the same person.
Best comparison ever on the show.
IWGP, they have the junior heavyweight tag team championships. So that's the one exception, but they don't really. I would say, and this is one of those like apples and oranges comparisons. I feel like it's a strong style with lucha mixed in the IWGP and New Japan. So I don't feel like it's just a traditional lucha style wrestling. Like these guys were luchadors. Even the two Asian counterparts in Kaz Hayashi and Yank, they were still luchador style wrestling. So I think IWGP is close, but I still don't think the wrestling world today has way too many fucking belts as it is. Every company, WWE has 3 world titles right now. Like they don't need any more belts. Then we get to I believe this is where they threw in that first backstage promo with Vince. And he's on the phone and he's talking, and then Trish comes in, and it's the whole like, we're gonna have a celebratory champagne toast. And I had to awkwardly explain to Al. She was like, "Isn't Vince married?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." There's this whole thing about like Trish and I explained it to her about how like Trish would push her around in the wheelchair and stuff. And she was like, "That's terrible. How did they get away with that like on TV?" Because the scene where they like pretty much fall over on the couch and start like going at it right there, and it's only shot from the waist up, so you can't actually see what's happening. But I was like, there's no way this would happen in 2023.
Oh no.
So Breigh, once again, first time you get to see this, did you get that Vince is a fucking creep vibe that I did from it?
Yes. I'm like, he's married. What is he doing? Like, is he actually like kissing her? Like, what the hell is going on?
I mean, this is the same Vince McMahon that at one point pitched an incest storyline with his daughter.
Yep.
It happened.
I mean, and we know all the yucky stuff that people have speculated for years about Stephanie and like Macho Man and shit like that. Like, we know Vince isn't the most moral person, I guess is a good way to put it. His moral compass is not there.
And wanted to personally like produce anything that Stephanie did, like told Bischoff like to really, really give it to her, and like creepy stuff.
He would pick her wardrobe out. I think that's one of the weirdest things, that he would pick what Steph wore to the ring, and then when you look at what she was wearing back then, you're like, you're her dad, bro. Yeah. And like, not to mention the fact, not just that you're her dad, he was already in his 50s, and almost like 20 years ago, he's 72 now. So he would have been over 50 years old, and his daughter's 6 years older than I am. So she wouldn't have even been in her 30s yet, probably.
Yeah.
Like, that's just gross. Vince is a gross old man. So we can all agree there that segment could have been left out of television.
They could have replaced that with what they used on Raw with the Jeff Jarrett. But look, there's Jeff Jarrett, Jeff. I'd spell it differently, GOONNE gone. Like, they could have, that progresses storyline more. Put the Trish stuff on Raw, because that progresses your WWF storyline.
Trish wasn't a WCW feature. It seemed weird to me for her to be on that TV show.
The Regal made sense. Like, I know you're going to get to it, but the Regal being there made total sense because he was in WCW.
I think this segment was one of the ones that could have been left out, or if they'd moved it around some. I also think production-wise, like, what do you guys think about and I know it's 2 live shows, it's hard to do it because nothing works perfectly in time. And DadHat, I know with your history and, theater and movies and stuff, like, when you plan for an hour, it's always going to take 90. Like, There's no way around it. So what if they had planned a little bit better to where these didn't have to be pre-tapes? So Raw and Nitro was showing the same stuff at the same time. So we get the GOONNE segment on both Raw and Nitro instead of pushing the Trish stuff. Do you think it would have been like fantasy booking, tinfoil hat, however you want to look at it? Could they have played a little bit more with the simulcast stuff versus just using pre-taped Vince stuff?
If they had more than 4 days, yeah.
Yeah.
It was and it not been the week before Mania. I mean, I've heard Bruce Pritchard say on his podcast, it was, let's get through this. Let's wrap it up. We get past Mania. Then we figure out what the next moves are. Like,
it was a big week.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact WrestleMania 17 turning out to be what it was. And looking back on the timeline, like the gimmick battle royal, like this was perfect timing for that because they just reacquired all these rights.
Yeah.
So like that was good timing. That was some good business moves on Vince's part. Then we get a cruiserweight title match. DadHat with one of your favorite Latino wrestlers in Chavo Guerrero Jr. going up against Sugar Shane Helms.
Sugar Shane.
So
does Breigh know who Sugar Shane ends up being?
No, and the whole time I'm watching this match, I'm like, why does that name sound? I feel like at some point we have like talked about this or something, but no, I don't know.
Shane Helms is the Hurricane.
Stand back.
Okay, yes, okay, that's where. All right, all right, now I know.
Yep.
That's how I explained it too. Was I was like, you don't know who Sugar Shane Helms is, and I was like, I have no fucking clue who that guy is, and I was like, that's the Hurricane, and she was like, no way.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, give it a couple years.
Yeah.
And so we get Sugar Shane Helms. He comes out, Nitro girls dancing, all of it down to the like. This was one of those Nitros. It was an outdoor show. The big Titantron was put up on the semi-inflatable screen. So instead of coming out from underneath it, like the guys and gals would walk in front of it and pose and then finish the walk to the ring. It screamed. It had some of those same vibes as like the Road Wild pay-per-views, Spring Break and stuff where they were wrestling outside on the pool. Like
it's sad though. Like for the last episode, like you look at like how minimal that crowd is. Like it like I just remember looking at it this week and going, they're like less than 300 people, maybe.
It was dead.
Yeah, like people in balconies at the hotel right beside of it, like that's your audience. Like I mean, it was sad for I don't know. It's this episode makes me mad.
It was not like, do you think, like looking back at it though, that's what they were doing with most of the Nitros there towards the end. They were booking out, like they weren't doing community centers and high school gyms like indie feds, but they weren't going to the Staples Center anymore. They weren't going
Georgia Dome.
Like, they weren't going to these big places. They were going back to the smaller 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 person venues. Yeah. Like, what did you guys think about that? Like, do you think WCW needed more of their roses this deep into the run? Like, they couldn't promote it as the last Nitro, obviously, but like, do you think it says something that after
they did though? That was one of the first things Shivani said. Shivani was like, he's like the last telecast of.
Well, I'm
Monday
saying
Nitro.
leading up to Monday Nitro, they couldn't tell us the week before. Oh yeah, next week's going to be the last week. They didn't even know that yet. Yeah. But like,
it wasn't even announced that it was going to be a night of champions until it came on.
Yeah, and they were like, "Fuck it, we're gonna put every belt on the line in every match," which I appreciate.
And smart, because if like, especially if they're figuring out like, all right, are you sticking with your Time Warner contract? No, you Booker T. No, you want to leave and you want to have an opportunity with WWF. Cool, Booker gets the belt.
Mm-hmm.
Like it made sense to figure out if you're going to bring them in eventually, storyline wise, who's going to be coming on board, who has these belts.
If you look at the winners through the whole thing, Booker T goes to WWE. Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman both end up in WWE. Shane Helms goes to WWE and continues to have success. He has the cruiserweight, the light heavyweight title. He has a tag team title run. Like
hardcore, right?
Yeah, he's a hardcore champion. That whole the WrestleMania 18 thing where it was him and Crash Holly and all those people like running around the arena throughout the entire WrestleMania. That's a great watch, Breigh, by the way. The hardcore match in that WrestleMania pretty much lasts the entire WrestleMania. because they keep going backstage. It changes like 4 times in the show.
Yeah.
Like, it's nuts. This was back before it was the 24/7, before the 24/7 sucked. Like, yeah, it was hella fun. So Sean O'Hare and Chuck Palumbo, Lance Storm, Mike Awesome.
Fantastic. All 4. Like, I'm a huge Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare fan. Sean O'Hare, I remember being like, oh, he's going to go to WWE. He's going to be a megastar. Like, he's jacked like Vince wants. He's doing swanton bombs. And all 4 of those end up in WWE.
I agree. I think that this match is one of the few that was kind of the toss-up, though, because with with Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, because Lance ends up going to WWF, but Sean O'Hare and Chuck Palumbo, neither one have that super stellar run. So this is the one side of that where you're kind of like, okay, maybe that wasn't the right one.
Lance Storm is the first person in the Invasion that you ever see.
Very true. He also shows up in his gear. Have you ever heard the reason why?
No.
They said people won't this is legit. Lance Storm's quote was, he was told by the producers that if he came out in street clothes, people wouldn't recognize him. So they put him in his gear to do a run-in segment for a company he wasn't a part of yet. And he was like, you realize how ridiculous that makes me look? It makes it look like I just run around in my gear all the time. And they were like, we're pretty sure people won't know who you are. Like, legit what the company told him.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. Like, he's Lance Storm, one of the great, like, the whole Team Canada thing. And, like,
he was dominant ECW.
Yeah. Like, it just seemed crazy to me that they wouldn't understand who he was. Breigh, did you know who any of these 4 guys were before today?
No, I did not. To be honest, no, I didn't.
No, that's what I like about this, because and I keep likening it to Allison, because when she started Botch Bots and Chair Shot, she was just a graphic designer. She had never watched wrestling in her entire life. So the parallels between your stories is hilarious to me, because you're having a lot of the same reaction she did. Because some of the stuff on the first walkthrough, she was like, I don't know who these people. The only person of the 4 she recognized was Lance Storm. And it's funny to me because I see so many parallels in that with her. And do you think this was the right choice for the tag titles? Could they have put them on somebody else this late? Could they have pulled the match, maybe put somebody else up there? Like, can you think of anybody else on the roster that would have been better to hold the WCW titles than O'Hare and Palumbo?
I think it's if WWE, like, I'm looking at it as from the WWE eyes, from where, because they're looking at what they're going to do next. Palumbo and O'Hare, younger. They probably are like, okay, well, they haven't been around much other places. We can, brush the WCW crap off of them, and make them into WWE talent. Where Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, they've been in ECW, they've been in WCW. It's harder to dust that off and make them. I mean, they eventually all get there, but looking at it like, they're younger, we'll have them longer.
Old dog, new tricks.
Yeah.
Kind of what I was thinking, like along the same lines too. But when I was watching, I was thinking, I was like, who else could they have put the tag team titles on? The Steiners were already broken up. Yeah. Rick wasn't going to come over right away anyways. He was pretty much like on the fence about it. So I was like, who could this? So maybe this was the only option, I guess. Not the only option, but the best option given the day.
Yeah.
We get another Vince promo in the back, guys. This is I believe, if my order is right, this is the one where he's like, I can't help it. Through the one that was in the intro, they decided to book their last show in a redneck beer swelled, Panama City or whatever. And he's like, my question is, did it seem, I understand Vince is playing the heel and Vince is doing heel things, but did it feel like he was intentionally shitting on WCW the entire time? Like visually, like, just crapping on Ted Turner for 2 hours
and the
straight.
South and everything.
Yeah. Okay, I was just making sure. Breigh, did you get that same vibe?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, because every time you'd see Vince, he was the most vile, putrid person on the planet for this entire episode. And I respect Vince McMahon for who he is as a business person, but he's yucky as shit outside of the ring. So I'll call the spade a spade. But Like here, he turned it up to 11, man. I just felt like the entire episode, every promo he cut, every pre-taped he did was just to feel as yucky as possible. Even down to this one, just dogging on the South. Stacy Keibler. This is one of those. Completely forgot Stacy was in WCW this late.
I didn't, but I didn't remember her being called Stacy. She was Miss Hancock.
Yeah.
So I was like, why are they calling her Stacy?
See, I couldn't remember her being there at all. So the Miss Hancock's thing, I was kind of like, okay, like I didn't get that. But like when I was doing my research, in my head, in my timeline, I thought she was in WWF first.
Oh no.
I thought it was WWF, then WCW, then back to WWF again. I didn't realize she started in WCW. So I learned something.
Her and Tori.
Yeah. Well, I knew Tori did. But for some reason, I thought Stacy started like earlier in the Attitude Era, then was one of the guys who jumped ship. So I was just confused about that. She comes out, Sean Stasiak, Bam Bam Bigelow. Another one of those guys. Sean Stasiak goes into WWE. He has not a great run, but he's there. Bam Bam.
Say that he beat a legend. Like it's Bam Bam Bigelow. I can't. I'd have to go get him. Like he's sitting on my bookshelf over there. He's Bam Bam Bigelow. Like, in my opinion, the best big man ever. Like the only person close is Vader, which we talked about. But like, yeah, like, and again, very WCW. The loser's gonna get a tattoo. Like,
I applaud them for the tenacity of knowing this is your last day at work, and they still went ahead with that segment. Granted, Stasiak won, so he wasn't going to have to get tattooed anyways. But could you imagine how pissed off Sean would be if he showed up to work and they were like, guys, you're going to put, Bam Bam over, and he's going to put a ridiculous tattoo on you. Oh, yeah, by the way, tonight's your last night of work here. What did you think? What did you think, Breigh, about the ridiculous stipulation of if Bam Bam beat Stasiak, he got the tattoo in?
That's the first I've ever heard of that, and I thought it was the most stupidest thing. I would rather have seen somebody shave off hair in the ring than a tattoo.
I like the hair versus hair thing. I like the whole, that's a very luchador thing. I love the tradition there. This seemed oddball as shit. I did love the fact that Bam Bam was wearing a t-shirt for a tattoo shop in Panama City.
Didn't he come out with a tattoo case too?
Yeah, he had a whole ass case, and he set it down beside the ring. He was wearing the sleeves were cut off of it, but it was a Panama City tattoo shop and everything. I was like, that's dedication to the gimmick right there, man.
Go Bam Bam.
Yeah. So you said you put him at the top of your list as one of the best big guys ever, only short to Vader. He's on my Mount Rushmore of big men. Mine goes Kane, Vader, Bam Bam. Breigh, what did you think about Bam Bam Bigelow? Like having a chance to see him. He's one of those quintessential big guys that everybody talks about being the king of those super heavyweights. Like, what did you think about some exposure to Bam Bam?
Yeah, it's like I've heard everybody talk about him and how great he is, and it was really, really interesting to actually see him in the ring and see how he moved. I really liked that.
Not the best interpretation at this point in his career, but yeah, it's Bam Bam.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest. We could put a primer together and be like, okay, now that you've seen this match, go watch these really great Bam Bam matches. Because
he carried an NFL player through an entire match at a WrestleMania.
Yes, he
did. The main event.
Yeah. He also did a moonsault off the top rope at damn near 400 pounds.
He went through the ring on top with Taz on his back.
Yeah. All kinds of Bam Bam was the man.
Yeah. But he's one of those you talked about that had been in WWE. Left and now in WCW. Oh, WWE's now your boss again.
And did we see him at WWE after the buyout?
No.
I didn't think so. I was like, I'm 90% sure this was it for him. He pretty much relinquished himself to indie appearances and meet and greets after this. This was the shortest match on the card. A minute and a half squash. I don't even want to call it a squash match because Bam Bam lost. Like Bam Bam could have beat Stasiak in 90 seconds and everybody would have called it a squash match. Stasiak getting the win because Stacy allowed him to play dirty. Weakest match of the card?
Yeah.
You guys think?
Mhm.
I think this next one was the last backstage segment. This was the one that had Regal in it, wasn't it?
Regal was in a couple. There's a couple with Regal. We kind of wrap them together. I mean, it's very much Regal, playing the heel commissioner, but being like, "Oh, do you want to buy that company? I've worked there. It's horrible." But I think the best part of it is when they come back to WCW, like Tony Schiavone being like, what's horrible? Having to put you over Steven Regal. Like he didn't say William Regal, he's a
He called
Steven
him
Regal.
Steven.
Having to put your crappy work over, which is funny because he's one of the best of all times, like technically in the ring. But it's again heel tactics.
Schiavone has a history of saying things like that with Mankind. He spoiled Mankind winning the title in @99 by saying, I'm sure that'll put butts in seats and all of that. Schiavone here, talking about it's at least we're putting you over, Steven Regal. Like Schiavone, where do you put Schiavone as your like commentators? Because as we get ready to close out WCW, he wasn't necessarily the voice of WCW, but he was kind of the voice of WCW, right?
The voice of my childhood.
Yeah.
Like I heard him far more. Like I had when I was young. Like first brought me maybe when like wrestling was like what I remember wrestling. Jim Ross, was on his way out to WWF. But Schiavone was definitely, because I was such a WCW guy, like the voice of what I watched.
Now, Breigh, flipping the script for you. In this episode, you saw a little baby Michael Cole, like doing backstage interviews and stuff, he was doing some commentating work, but he hadn't been moved to the commentary booth full time yet. Your impressions of seeing a young baby Michael Cole with the bleach blonde tips and the WrestleMania jersey on with the blue jeans versus the suit we're accustomed to now. This is a very different person, right?
No, I didn't even know that was him. Like it took me a second to realize that it was him. Oh my god, that's a.
He used to be the rib of a bunch of jokes. Like DX would like give him wedgies and like I think that's probably why I've grown to love him because he's been there for so long now. But like when he was first like the major main commentary person, I couldn't take him seriously. I'm like, you're the dude that everybody makes fun of. Like you're the dweeb.
He came from news. Like he didn't come from wrestling. So like part of me, like the little bit of the journalism in my heart from school, I'm like, respect Michael Cole. Like you could have went on to CNBC and been a news anchor to do whatever the hell you wanted to. You were a lifelong wrestling fan, so you decided you wanted to work for the fucking WWE, right? Like I give him mad props for that, but I agree. That dude went through some shit in the first half of his career with WWE.
Yeah.
Once again, I was blown away. Completely forgot the blonde tips and the baseball jerseys and all of that. Like, I forgot how wild late '90s, early 2000s style was. Then we get to the cruiserweight tag team match for the cruiserweight tag team championships. And once again, I completely forgot these things. Even an hour later.
Yeah.
The show started and I was like, fuck, I forgot they had tag team championships for the cruiserweights. Then by the end of the episode, the actual tag team title matches, I was like, I already forgot again. These belts are real.
Same.
Elix Skipper and Kid Romeo. Who the fuck are those guys?
I know the names. That's the thing. Like same thing when you said Kaz Hayashi, and Evan Courageous. I'm like, I remember these names. You could put a lineup and I'd be like, nope, don't know who's it. Like,
what do you think about Elix Skipper there, Breigh?
That's a different name, all right. I'm like, who the hell are these people? When,
like, you look at this match, that once again, and this is kind of the reoccurring theme for what we've been saying all night, was this just their last-inch effort to put aces in their places with who they thought their best stars were going into WWE? Billy Kidman goes straight over. He starts working, has a good run. We know Ray doesn't show up for a couple years.
Yeah.
He's much later.
Which was good for him.
He needed the break. He absolutely had to get it.
It lets the mat go too soon. They're not gonna put the mask back on you. You can come back with the mask. He still has the mask.
I think that was the best bet. Ray with a mask is 10 times out of 10 better than Ray without it. So this was the best bet to put these, I don't want to say useless titles because it was still a championship. I love wrestling, but the Cruiserweight Tag Team Championships weren't exactly over with me in 2001.
No.
Once again, just another 5-minute banger Cruiserweight match, right? They're all the same high spots we saw at the first half, just with half as many people.
Yeah.
That's how it came across to me, at least.
Yeah.
Main event, DadHat.
Well, wait, there's one more thing before we get to the main event.
Which one was that?
Not a match. And it doesn't make sense because if they were going to do this, they should have done it with more. We get this random not even filmed, probably on location, of Diamond Dallas Page thanking the fans. And thanking for making him be able to live a dream at such a late time in his life. And it's awesome because you really feel, Diamond Dallas Page to me is probably the most genuine person in wrestling ever, ever. But if you're gonna do that, sprinkle in more throughout the show. We got a backstage about Booker, and he's like, "This is not the end for me." Blah 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 blah. Diamond Dallas Page kind of echoes that. The show, this is not the last you'll ever see of me. At least I don't think. But there should, if you're gonna do something, there should have been from some more people that were there, a Rick Steiner, we got a Flair for the promo, maybe an Arn Anderson, maybe, or I don't know, it just felt out of left field.
A lot of this felt like it was out of left field.
Yeah, I get it. They had 4 days to put this together.
Page not being on the card seemed weird to me.
Yeah.
He was arguably one of your biggest stars. We've talked about
height
how
of Attitude Era WCW.
Yeah. It just seemed weird to me. This was and I'm not saying it would be Flair and Sting and Page, obviously. That's not at all what I'm saying. But if you put your Mount Rushmores of WCWs in your top 5s, top 10s, Diamond Dallas Page is always up there. Yeah. I put him in my top 5 WCW. So for him not to be on the card at all just seemed kind of weird to me. He wasn't used in any capacity other than a pre-tape. He almost seemed forgotten.
I would have let him have a Flair promo. You could have lost a Vince thing and give him, 5 minutes on a microphone in the ring.
The 3.5, 4 minute Stacy Keibler promo, the pre-tape in the middle of it, that could have been Page's chance.
Yep.
So we saw the main event. Sting, he got the win over Flair via submission. He knocked it out. It was a banger 10-minute match.
Played the hits again.
Once again, they played the hits. They went in. You saw a superplex, Scorpion Deathlock. You saw Flair do the Flair things.
The fall down, the up over the top, the turnbuckle, the hits. Yeah,
they played their hits. It wasn't. I think you and I have talked about it, how Flair said he had 8 different matches. He had an A match, a B match, a C match, a D match, an E match, and he would just decide that night, tonight we're running my E match, because I got to work tomorrow. To me, this looked like Flair. He didn't phone it in, but this looked like an F for a G match for Flair. He knew he only had to work 8 or 10 minutes. He knew he only had to do these 10 moves. Sting was going to do his 10 moves, and then it was going to be a finish. This is one of those fantasy booking questions. Breigh, I'll start with you and let you knock this one out. Could they have cut some of those pre-tapes back to give these guys more time? Because this felt a lot like the opening bout, where I was like a 5-minute perfect match. It was a 30-minute match compressed into 5 minutes. I felt like this one was a 30-minute match compressed into 7 minutes that needed to breathe more. I felt like these guys could have taken 20 or 30 minutes and tore the house down. And I think this would have been the perfect chance to give it to them. Do you think 10 minutes cut them short?
Yeah, they easily could have took away even the Vince Trish segment in the back. They easily could have took away that and gave them much more time.
DadHat, what you think? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, the wife stuck her head in. Yeah, sorry, people. Real life. But I think for where Flair was at this point in his career, you know, he even says later on, he's like, I was a shell of myself, you know. I'm wrestling in a t-shirt because I'm not in shape. Like, I think the length of what it was fine. If you were going to give him more time, we're about to go into it. The simulcast. Did you need 20 minutes of Vince talking before we get to Shane? Like,
literally verbatim what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Like, the last 30 minutes of this show seemed like it took for fucking ever.
He gloats some more. He does some names, which part of me, like the whole, you know, Goldberg up, Goldberg down. So Big Papa Pump, which he doesn't even call him Scott Steiner, just Big Papa. Pump. It makes me wonder. I'm like, if like somebody gave him names, if he even knew that was Scott Steiner, because Scott Steiner has worked for Vince McMahon.
He's held his tag titles for crying out loud.
Yeah. Like if he knew that was Scott Steiner, but like it almost made me wonder of like if this was a litmus test for them to feel like, what is the WWF audience? Who are they going to react to? And like, because the names they were throwing out there, Booker T, Big Papa Pump, Buff Bagwell, up or down, and then Goldberg got the biggest pop of them.
Crowd blew up.
I mean, but look where Goldberg was at this point. Super over. Broke my heart. It broke my heart then. I remember when he said Sting and the lukewarm response that audience gave. I was just like, "Are you kidding me?"
Hulk Hogan, Lex Luger. Can't forget those two. Those are those are the first huge ones. Yeah. The guys that like cut their teeth in WWF. Like,
and it was like cold bathroom water.
The WWE crowd did not react to. I didn't. Looking back on it once again, I did not remember Hulk Hogan getting almost no reaction.
Which is funny to see, you know, a couple years later, what ends up happening.
Yeah, at 18, we're what, a year later?
Yeah. Oh yeah, a year. Yeah.
Like a year to the day almost. Like a week, a year within that 52-week period or whatever. Like, the thing that freaks me out about it is crowd, zero reaction to Hulk Hogan. And then a year later at WrestleMania 18, it's so flip-flopped that they changed the finish of the match. Like, they're seriously in WrestleMania 18. Vince is trying to figure out, do I need to change this to put Hogan over here because of how much the crowd was into Hogan.
And then change him back to red and yellow.
Yeah, the very next night on Nitro. Or not Nitro, on Raw. Rather. The story is Hogan had to leave WrestleMania, fly home, get his gear, and then fly out for Raw because they didn't want him in the black and white. They wanted him in red and yellow. And we're only a year from that. And on this Nitro, the crowd's just like, Hogan who?
Yeah.
Like they didn't give a shit. What did you think? Like, Breigh, hearing Hulk Hogan's name in a WWF ring as a WCW talent getting no reaction. Buff Bagwell getting almost no reaction. Papa Pump getting no reaction, but Goldberg being the one that blows it off.
Especially because I know you know Goldberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
and what Goldberg is today.
I feel like out of all those names, he would have got the least.
He was a man back in the day.
2001, he was hot.
Yeah.
Like red hot.
Yeah.
But looking at the list, though, like we keep saying, Hogan's, Luger's, Badwell's, Booker's, Steiner's, like all of them, class act Hall of Famers, every single one of them. And for Goldberg to get the biggest pop, you're like, hindsight's 2020 as a motherfucker here. Like, these fans were wrong. So then we get it. We get to the point, and then finally, 20 minutes later, we get to the meat and potatoes of the whole episode, okay? Shane comes out. He walks to the ring. Also, rewind. You remember the ring announcer for the Raw? Did it seem weird that she forgot to announce Vince McMahon was coming out? Did you notice that? Like, he was halfway down the ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was halfway down the ramp and then was like, what the fuck? And then she starts saying his name and he like walks back up and then comes down.
I don't think that was meant to be on there. I don't know if WWE knows that was edited onto the
That just seemed funny to me. I was like, that's what I said. I was like, this seems weird to me that this happened on Peacock, because it was like she was just sitting there and then camera cuts to him and he's like, what the fuck? And then she stands up real quick and starts ring announcing, and you catch him like jogging back up to the top of the ramp and then coming back down. Like, that was the most un-WWE thing you think you could see at this point. Shane, he goes down to the ring. We're talking, because Vince explains that he's going to do the contract at WrestleMania. He's going to have
Turner out. Yeah.
He's going to bring Turner out, and he's going to have him in the middle of the ring, and he's going to sign the contract, and he's going to set him down in the corner so he can watch him strangle the life out of his son, just like he did his competition. And I was like, that's the most Vincent Kennedy McMahon shit I've ever heard in my life. And then it cuts over. Shane. And
it's perfect though, like, because they're showing the Tron, like his entrance video, and you don't realize that he's walking out through Panama City Beach, Florida's entrance. Like, all of a sudden you see a glance of the Nitro logo, and you're like, "What? Wait a minute!" And then you're like, it pans out. Like, it's perfect how they show him.
The announcers are like, "Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? What's going on? Where is he?" And then you see him in the ring, and he says the line. And I remember this line as a kid because I remember how big it seemed to me. He said, "Shane McMahon is here in a WCW ring in Panama City." And I was like, a McMahon in a WCW ring on Raw? What the fuck is happening in my life right now?
Meltdown.
Yes. 16-year-old Will was confused as fuck. Like, Breigh, what did you think?
We were 16 at this point.
Yeah, almost 16. I was nearly 16 at this point. I was just getting old enough to realize how business is done. You know what I mean? Like, you don't show up on your rival competition's television program and fight with your dad on national TV. Fuck it, Shane McMahon did.
Yeah.
Like, Breigh, this may have been to the point where you said your YouTube video cut off. Did you get to see Bane come out?
No, I meant that's the part. This is the part where it cut out. Yeah.
Okay. Shane comes out. He says, "You're right, Dad. There's a McMahon on the contract, but it doesn't say Vince McMahon. It says Shane McMahon." And he gives that look where you realize. And second, Shane's wearing a fucking turtleneck in March in Panama City. It's got to be like 85 degrees there. Like, it's not like summer heat yet, but it's way too fucking hot to be wearing like khaki pants and a turtleneck. Like, the ring announcers in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts, for crying out loud. And this man looks like he's ready to paint a fucking Bob Ross painting. Like,
I mean, what you said where he was like, it does say McMahon, Shane McMahon. But I think the bigger point that he drives home is where, I mean, he says it very boldly. I now own WCW. And you get Shane on one side, Vince on the other. And so you get, as Shane is saying that, you get Vince's reaction of, shit. Yep.
Because he said during his promo, nobody else can buy it. It's already agreed to verbally. Like, Ted Turner's already signed his half of the contract. It's mine. Mm-hmm. So for Shane to pull the old whoop-de-doo on Daddy and show up in Panama City Beach, like, that was...
Looking back on it now, though, we should have totally seen it coming. Something like that.
Looking at how McMahon books, like, I don't know how nobody saw this coming. Like, the swerve of adding Shane into it. Steph wasn't quite there yet, but the build with Shane going into WrestleMania 17, this was the move.
Yeah. Because
this means Shane now owns WCW going into the following Sunday for WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So that McMahon versus McMahon with, Linda in the wheelchair and, Trish pushing her out and Steph and then, Shane and the whole McMahon fucking family's at ringside. And, we know what happens at that WrestleMania. Coast to coast. One of the first times we saw it.
It's called the Van Terminator. It will always be the Van Terminator.
So, guys, looking back at it, Breigh, what did you think about your first WCW Nitro that coincidentally was the last WCW Nitro?
It's so funny that the first one I watched is the last one. But really, it makes me want to go back and kind of watch all of the other ones leading up to that one, now that I watched the last one.
You know what, though? When we do the first Nitro ever, we're bringing you back on.
I was literally about to say, anytime a watch-along wins a poll, like, you're pretty much mandatory to come on just so you can watch WCW now that I know that. Because, like, Havoc 97. Like, you've never seen Halloween Havoc 97?
No.
Oh, my God. That's, like, one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. That's my second favorite match to ever happen is in that pay-per-view. Like, that's wild to me. That's amazing. You're on every watch long from here on out, Breigh. You're the unofficial tripod of WCW moving forward, outside of Jay. So looking back on it, guys, going into WrestleMania 17, everything that happened on this last episode of Nitro, like, what did you guys think about it? How do you feel having a chance to rewatch it now, 27 years later?
Good, Breigh.
Hold on. Not 27, 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was way off.
Don't age us more, buddy.
Man.
What did you think about it? The old WCW.
I mean, it wasn't too bad. I don't think there was. I mean, I liked it for my first time watching it. I really liked it.
Were there any yucky moments where you're just like, I don't want anything to do with this?
Well, I mean, besides the Vince, honestly, all the Vince stuff, I could do without.
Yeah.
DadHat, what'd you think going back and rewatching it after all these years?
Still pisses me off.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Me too. As a wrestling fan, I think WCW. Yeah.
It doesn't even feel like it feels like a WWE show. Like watching it, the pacing, the everything, the verbiage by people.
The title match being first and Sting
yeah,
and Flair going on last.
It just doesn't. You know, we talked about like WCW, even though by that point, you know, we've gone through the NWO and the highest points of WCW. It's still, to me, WCW always felt kind of like black and gold NXT. The audience was darkened. It was serious. This Panama City was like, oh, they turned the audience lights all the way up. And I don't know. It might as well they should have just, how the NWO made it NWO Nitro. They should have just put WWF right above Nitro. Like, that's what it felt like.
100%. I also think that you're right with the way they shot it, because if you go 1 week earlier to the other Nitro, you can see a very drastic difference in production value of the way they shoot, down to the angles they shoot the roaming camps.
Yep.
You know, like the angles they're shooting from, you can tell there's somebody different in their ear than Bischoff or Nash or whoever it was at that point. You can tell, like, the way everything is happening, it's totally different.
Yep.
That's it. We done the damage we could do, DadHat. It's back to you.
All righty. So we're going to make this quick because Will and I are going to jump off here and go record another one because somebody is on vacation next week. But like always, make sure you follow all of our socials, WC Wreckage Pod on the Twitter. We are now on Threads as well. Just, you know, if you follow us on Instagram at world_championship_wreckage, you can find us on Threads, same way. That's where we're going to be putting all the polls and everything. TikTok, WC Wreckage Podcast. And yeah, but of course, like always, we want to make sure we give Breigh the floor. Breigh, where can they find you? What do you do?
Well, I mean, individually, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok under my name, Breigh Stout. And every Wednesday on, personally, my favorite show in the whole wide world, Wrestletok Wolfpac, 9 to 11 over on the Twitch, /Wrestletok Wolfpac.
Yeah.
Watch that Wednesday.
She is the tribal queen of the Wrestletok Wolfpac. But yeah, so yeah, well, let's get down to business. Well, first of all, before we get down to business of a poll, as of right now, which it is July 13th, we are 5 or 6 followers away from hitting 100, which is crazy to me. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed, who watches. It's crazy to me, though, that it's like people that watch these long form episodes and then like message me individually on TikTok and are like, another great episode. Love it. And it's crazy to me that people do that. Because I'm just a dude talking wrestling with my friends. But when we hit 100, we have some plans. One thing being that Will and I decided we're going to do a little 100 sub celebration. We're going to do our first live on YouTube. We'll have some guest folks dropping in, you know, from the channel. You might know them, XLJ, the OG, Mr. B-Roll, Husky Rhodes, Nate Slater. You know, Jay, of course, might pop in with who knows what mask he'll have on at this point. But we're also going to do we're going to have a giveaway. So make sure that you are subscribed. We posted about it today. Once we hit 100, we'll probably do it extend it for a week after that, but make sure that you are subscribed and comment under any video.
The same one?
What?
Is it still the same?
Yeah,
it was?
the Ric Flair. Yep. So it is make sure you are subscribed to the WCW World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel. Make sure you comment Ric Flair under any video, and you'll be entered to win a WWE Ric Flair WCW figure where he is wearing the Four Horsemen t-shirt, which is super cool. And also at that 100 sub celebration, I have some special announcements to make on new things coming to the channel, which I am super stoked about. And like Will and I talked about when this first got started about, everyone is welcome at the table. It is not a, closed off to anybody. So let's just say the table just got a couple extra chairs added to it. Is all I'm going to say. So, but I've got some announcements for when we hit 100 and we do that live. So share, let people know where we are. Plus, we might not be talking about just WCW itself for a while.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we might be expanding. So anyway, Will, we have to do 2 polls since we're recording 2 episodes tonight. So let's start with the first poll. What do you want to talk about? All right, I can go first this time.
You go first. I went first last week.
All right. So you know what I want to talk about? Since we talked about the last Nitro, I want to talk about the invasion.
Oh,
I want to talk about the invasion into the WWF.
The end of WCW and where we go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Bash at the Beach 96. That's all I got to say.
I don't know if I've ever watched that full card all the way through.
Really?
Yeah.
That's for anybody who doesn't know, that's the infamous leg drop that changed the world. That's Hogan's heel turn. So Bash at the Beach 96, we're going to do a watch along if it wins. That's my vote.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, folks, we're going to end this week just like we end every week. Wise words from the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.